You get to see most of our wall, but that's okay.
And we're live on YouTube.
Awesome.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Podcast. Today we're talking about Turo stuff, Turo things.
How we price, how we, manage and like run our Turo business.
Yeah, so you want to start us out since you do most of that?
Sure. Did you want to do a question of the day or no?
If you have one.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, now you're looking one up.
I know, I forgot to do it earlier.
Goodness.
Oh man.
So last week I botched the audio. As one of our listeners said, it sounded like we were in a fish tank.
It was bad. It was really bad.
What happened was the entire live episode was recorded through the microphone on our GoPro. We're using the GoPro for the video. Works all right.
On YouTube.
Trying to work on the lighting a little bit, and we'll probably upgrade the camera at some point. But for now, it does the job. And then we have a Yeti microphone here. And I did something wrong last week. So we had a nice microphone in front of us for the entire hour, but not a second of it was recorded through that microphone. So fixed it for this week.
Okay, so since, today's the 5th, but since yesterday was the 4th, and I'm a pretty big fan of Star Wars, may the 4th be with you. How about we do a would you rather
Mike Tyson
Star Wars question?
Okay.
Well, this probably wouldn't be good for you now that I think about it. Maybe we should do something else. But would you rather be okay, would you rather have R2-D2, which you know who that is?
Yes.
Would you rather have R2-D2 or BB-8 as your droid sidekick?
R2.
I just realized you don't know what
R2-D2 is more of a classic. I'd have to go with him. BB-8's the little orange one that rolls around in the newer movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was about to
I'd go with. No,
I'm impressed. That was good.
Yeah, I'll go with R2-D2.
I was gonna say I was gonna pull up an image.
He's just more of a classic. Who would you pick and why? I don't really know much about the differences.
But I like this question because they're so somewhat similar. So I don't know. I like them both, but yeah, R2-D2 definitely is a classic. That's what we grew up with. But well, I guess I grew up with. You only have watched the movies since we've been married, or all of them. The BB-8 is cute though. It like rolls around.
Yeah.
As my sidekick, sure, I would do BB-8 because it's fun. He rolls around.
You choose
like rolls around on a ball versus R2-D2 is on like wheels.
Okay.
I don't know.
I see what you're saying. Great question.
It would be better if you knew Star Wars better.
So moving on.
I'm impressed you knew that. That was a good job. I'm impressed.
Wow, okay. Thanks.
I'm being serious.
Let's start with talking about how we do Turo research. Let's talk about that.
Ooh.
In choosing what vehicles to add to our fleet. We've got 3 vehicles now. Just added a Mazda 3 sedan about a week ago. And just earlier today, we got our first booking on that one, which is great.
Yeah. And we just listed that maybe
it's been listed
a few days ago.
It's been listed less than a week. Beginning of this week, I think we listed it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see if I can share a screen here. If you're on the podcast, sorry, I'll try to describe everything. Here we go.
Which one were you going to do?
Share screen. So what I'm trying to pull up is a website that we discovered a few months ago, carsync.io. And
so question, do you know why it's IO versus like just .com?
I don't know.
Because I've never heard of .io, so it's that instead of .com.
I don't know. I don't know what .io is. .io meaning. It's just a different
The British Indian Ocean Territory. Thanks, Google. Not
there
helpful.
we go. So that's where this domain is hosted. British Indian Ocean Territory. Super relevant. Thanks, Kelly. So what CarSync shows you, I think you have to have a Turo account in order to sign up for CarSync. And it's a free service right now, and they do that by harvesting all your data.
So is it a hosting? Explain that. Is it a hosting account, or even somebody who's not hosting can do it?
I don't know for sure, but I think you have to have a hosted vehicle, but somebody try it out and let me know.
If you don't host.
I know when we signed up a month or two ago, it connected to our Turo account, and they harvest all our Turo metrics, which I'm okay with. And then it
calculates,
spits out all this cool information. So if you're a Turo host or you're thinking about being a Turo host, this is really good for looking at what's in your area currently and kind of getting an idea of what vehicles could be good. So right now in May is pretty low rental demand. This is kind of a shoulder season month. And I've heard in general, Turo hosts across the country, this has been a pretty slow month for them. So the first thing I want to point out here is in the top left on CarSync. I went under the Analytics tab. I'm looking at the Turo Demand Index. I think this is the most powerful page that I found here for looking at what's in your area and doing research for future vehicles. So it shows our 3 cars we have, and it shows that there's 1111 vehicles currently listed in our area. So 1,111. And what you can do is if you come over here to number of vehicles, it'll tell you how many vehicles are listed right now and what the history has been. So what's really interesting is a lot of people in Anchorage don't like to host their vehicles in the winter. So they delist their vehicles and they just put them in storage, or some people sell them and then buy new ones in the spring. So if we go back as far as the history shows me right here, beginning of February, there were 537 vehicles listed. And as I just told you, there's almost double now. Well, that is double. That's just over double, 1,100 vehicles. So things are definitely ramping up for the summer travel season. And that's how the travel industry is here in Alaska in general. So you can see kind of in mid-March is where a lot of people started listing new vehicles. And now we're to this. And so with that, a combination of things are going on with the supply and demand of this rental space. Right now, the current demand for today is only 25%. That means only 1 out of 4 vehicles listed are actually booked for today. And I'd say that's accurate. We have 3 vehicles and 1 of our vehicles is booked today. The other 2 are sitting, waiting for their next booking. And looking at here, you can see the average over the winter, February through March, was in the 40s. In parts of March, it got up to 50% demand, which is pretty good, I'd say. And then once we hit end of April, something here happened. And I think the biggest correlation is the number of vehicles listed skyrocketed, but the demand has not skyrocketed yet. It's probably pretty similar number of people looking for Turo cars right now in May as there were in February, March, April. But there's twice as many cars now. So we went from 50% demand down to 25% today. Now looking, May is going to be pretty slow. I think we currently have 3 bookings. I think our
May
gross,
that sounds about right.
Our gross revenue for the month of May is just over $1,000 right now. So pretty low, I would say, for what we could have if our vehicles were booked out for more than 50% of the time. But looking ahead at June, this is where Turo hosts in Anchorage make their money. Really starting end of May, you can see it jumps back up to 36% demand, and then into June, we're already in about 60% demand for all of June and all of July, and we're about a month away from the start of June still. So a lot of people are going to still be booking as we get closer to June. That's when,
Right.
in general, if you go on Turo, you can also see the pricing here. On CarSync, there's another tab here if you're listening and not watching, the asking/booked price. So you can scroll through here and kind of see the averages for your area, and you can see right at the end of May here, the 50 percentile asking price jumps from about $150 to 180, and then goes up a little bit from there up to 190 into July. That's a pretty big jump. There was another jump kind of at the beginning of May as we get closer and closer to summer. So that's something to really keep an eye on if you're living in a seasonal kind of touristy place. There's going to be an on season, off season, and that's definitely metrics you should be aware of. There's some people that have missed out on some really good summer money because they kept their pricing at kind of what a winter price is.
Right.
And they missed out on hundreds, thousands of dollars by doing that. And they're probably really excited because they're probably close to 100% booked right now if they didn't shift their prices up, which is great. But if they had shifted their prices and waited for more of the last minute stuff, they would have gotten a much higher rate.
Or even part of that, like if you up your rates, it's not because you're trying to say like, well, everything has to be more expensive because I just want more money. No, it's also though, if you're 100% booked for all of your time available, you're also working for cheaper when you're having to put in more work because you're now, specifically the summer months, having to always be available and ready, like right there on the go those days. And then you're also not getting compensated for the actual maybe mileage that they're putting on, because in the summer months, they're most likely putting on more miles onto your car and everything that goes along with that, right? Like if they put on more miles, then you have to do more oil changes, that sort of thing. So you have to really think about all of the factors regarding summer travel and keeping your prices low, like bookable, but also marketable, where you're in comparison with not only other Turo hosts, but you're also in competition with the local national brand. I was going to say Turo hosts, but car rental places.
Yeah, the thing is the winter is fairly slow here for the rental car industry, or at least in our experience for Turo. We were at 30 to 40% utilization rate over the winter, which is not a great business model. That means that roughly two thirds of every month, our vehicles were just sitting, not making us any money. They were sitting there depreciating by getting older, and potentially through the cold temperatures, procuring additional maintenance, because if you leave a vehicle sitting for a month straight in an Alaskan winter, that's not great for it. You want it to be running a little bit more often, things like that. So, but we'll be able to make up for that slow winter by taking advantage of the opportunity and the demand in the summer. Now, looking a little closer at this page on CarSync, there's also an overall map of Anchorage, and it shows you little green dots everywhere that a vehicle is listed. That's the pickup location of those vehicles. And you can see it's pretty well dispersed all over Anchorage, everywhere. Ours, we kind of run our business model keeping them at or near the airport, because that's where our almost all of our travelers have come from. I think we've only had a couple locals, and so we try to keep it convenient for them. And we think that with that added perk, we're getting more bookings or able to demand a higher price. Looking over at the left tab, there's a few other interesting analytics. One, price per day distribution. You can kind of see overall that there's, roughly 5% of the current listed vehicles are listed at over $260 a day, but most are in the $90 to $100 range. Then looking at car makes, top 20, there's a lot of Toyotas listed in Anchorage. Almost 16% of vehicles in Anchorage are a Toyota, followed by Ford, almost 13%, Chevy, almost 11%, Subaru, 7%, Jeep, 7%, and it just goes down from there. Something that's interesting that I'm interested to see how this plays out is Mazda. You can see here is 1.4%. There's not very many Mazdas listed in Anchorage, and Mazda 3s specifically. We have the one of the two Mazda 3s,
which is kind of wild.
I'm surprised by that. I suppose it's not as popular as, say, a Camry or a Corolla or a Nissan Versa or maybe a Honda Civic, but even Honda isn't. Honda's only 4.5% of the market here, so we'll see how that plays out. I don't really know what to do with this data. Does knowing that 16% of vehicles in Anchorage are Toyotas, does that mean that you'd be better off with a Toyota, or is that just what hosts have picked? I personally think that you will be better off with something like a Toyota that is known for its reliability and lower overall maintenance needs. And maybe that's why 16% of the market is Toyota. There's other people thinking like me. What's really cool, though, if you scroll down to the next, it shows the market share by car models. The number one car model is a Toyota Sienna, 3.2%.
That's not shocking.
Then we have a Dodge Grand Caravan. Then we have a Subaru Forester, Subaru Outback. Then we have a Toyota Tacoma, Chevy Tahoe, Chevy Silverado, Ford Escape, and then some pickup trucks. And then we've got Toyota Highlander, which we have one of. I think the main takeaway from this is you got to think about what the customer wants. I think most people coming to Anchorage are coming on vacations in the summer with family or friends. And there's a huge demand for big seat vehicles. That sounded really weird.
Big seat
vehicles
with a lot of
with multiple seats, not the size of the seats, the number of the seats. So when you look at the top three here, Sienna, Grand Caravan, and Subaru Forester, I believe, is a 5-seater. A lot of people like Subarus. They seem adventurous and good for adventures. That's probably why that's up there. They have a good reputation for their winter driving reliability, I believe.
I think it's probably these are the common, not only because you got to think about Turo as well as not just like how we run it, which is we run it solely for business. Other people are putting their personal vehicle on there and running it as like a side thing. So a lot of these are very popular cars in Anchorage. Like people would normally be driving these around.
That's a good point. When they delist their vehicles in the winter, it's their personal vehicle that they're going to drive. So I find it very interesting that 6% of the vehicles listed right now are the Toyota Sienna and the Dodge Ram Caravan, both minivans, either 7 or 8 seaters, depending on what particular year and trim model you get. And I think that's really telling that there's a lot of opportunity in that space, the 7-8 seater minivans or large SUVs. A little farther down the line, we got the Chevy Tahoe, we got the Toyota Highlander, and Chevy Suburban. I think that's an 8-seater. And then quite a few mid-size SUVs coming in on here. Some are just 5-seaters, but like the Highlander, some have a third row. So that's something that's I think you can take a few takeaways from there. If there's a lot of certain type of vehicle listed, there's probably some increased demand for that. Next, coming down, you see the market by production year share. And it's a pretty even spread in Anchorage, but there's definitely more in the 2016 to 2022 range than older. And we have, I think the best way to do it is to buy older vehicles that have already depreciated, but older vehicles that have good maintenance reliability, like Toyotas or Hondas or Mazdas do pretty well. So we have a 2011, a 2012, and a 2015. So all three of those are in the years that are kind of a minority here. So that's interesting. That means a lot of Anchorage hosts are putting newer vehicles on there. And I honestly don't think that us having a 2012 versus a 2018 is really going to make that much of a difference. It doesn't seem like...
We certainly haven't noticed. What's our newest vehicle? Is it
2015?
A 2015?
So it's 7 years old.
Yeah, and that sucker's booked all of July already. Like, it's been booked for all of July for, I don't know, a month or two now. It doesn't seem like people care about that. Like, I don't know, if I was booking a car, do I care what year it is? I mean, as long as it's running, like, and it looks okay in the pictures and it has maybe certain features we're looking for, I don't really care what year it is.
Yeah, I think the condition that you see in the photos and the features that it offers are more important than the year. Right. And by features, I mean, does it have winter tires? Is it all-wheel, four-wheel drive? Those are primarily winter features that people look for. Summer, more so, is going to be the number of seats. Mm-hmm. And some people think that Alaska always has ice and they're going to need winter four-wheel drive tires for the summer.
You don't.
So that honestly might help you get your vehicle booked more if you have four-wheel drive in the summer, because some people think they need it.
That is fair. That's true.
And then the last thing on here that I think is it is not surprising at all to me, but it shows the market by luxury classes. We've got almost 94% of the vehicles are standard class, and there are 6% which are deluxe class. And I'm not quite sure exactly what qualifies for deluxe class. I know there are some Turos listed.
I know.
I think there's a few like nicer Corvettes and things that people only list in the summer. But in general, luxury vehicle rentals, that's not really
a thing up here.
I don't think there's too much demand for that.
Right.
Because that's not what people are coming to Anchorage for. If you're going to rent a luxury vehicle, you're more likely probably to be targeting locals than travelers. Now, I know there's a lot of other areas where luxury deluxe class or super deluxe on here is another class, are the big ticket ones that have super demand. And some of those are places like Miami or Las Vegas or warm weather places where people go on
luxury vacations.
Yeah, luxurious vacations. I bet Hawaii has quite a lot of demand in the deluxe, super deluxe class. I know when we were in Miami a few months ago, we saw a lot of luxury supercars, Lamborghinis, a lot of Teslas, a lot of Porsches. Yeah, I was surprised. We almost considered renting a Tesla while we were down there just for fun, because the going rate for a Tesla was actually not too bad.
It wasn't bad at all.
I was willing to spend that much money. Logistically, it just didn't work out for us. So that's something, if you're thinking about Turo or you're thinking about adding additional vehicles to your fleet, check out carsync.io. There's a lot of really good information there. This is just one tab, and you can really dive into a lot of other tabs. If you have vehicles listed, you can look at your fleet metrics. And that's really helpful in if you're trying to expand your fleet or maybe get rid of a vehicle, you can see which vehicles are performing best. Like say we have a Toyota Highlander. It is our highest performing right now, mostly because it's been listed the longest.
Right, which would make it
But
fair.
we can look at the exact metrics and see, okay, that was a worthwhile investment. Maybe we should get another Toyota Highlander, which,
Right.
spoiler, I think I'm going to go look at one later this evening that
Yeah.
we might purchase. Highlander has done well for us being 7 seats.
Which honestly, I'm not sure how many people have actually used it as a 7-seater, but I will say as a even as a 5-seater, if they are using it as such, it has more trunk space. So I think a lot of people are booking it even just as a 5-seater for the trunk space, which is, I mean, that works out for us too.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal 5-seater with luggage room, a tight 7-seater without luggage room.
Right. Right.
If you're traveling with 7 people, you're going to need a full-size SUV or a minivan.
Yeah.
But the Highlander definitely is, I should add another thing to look at in researching vehicles is
Researching vehicles to buy or even your own, like your own vehicle to put on.
Yeah, look at what the big dog rental agencies have in your area and see what they're kind of missing. In the Alaska Anchorage area, they really have very limited options when it comes to 7, 8-seaters.
Like we're talking very limited, like bad. Like we're talking, if we already looked this up like a month or so ago, they're already booked out for all their 7+ seaters, 7, 8-seaters from June, for sure June, actually really end of May through the rest of the summer. Like they don't have availability until like I think late August or something like that for a 7 to 8-seater. So having a 7 to 8-seater on Turo is really beneficial because the big national brands that are up here can't keep those in stock or they don't have as many of them.
Yeah. There's, I think, interesting arguments going both ways. But if you're a Turo host and you consider Hertz or Enterprise to be your competition, some would disagree with that statement. I'm not sure where I fall. But if you consider them your competition, how can you set yourself apart from them? Look at what vehicles they don't have or they don't have enough of. Hertz has a lot of sedans. Maybe we don't want to get into the sedan game. Well, we
Right.
just did. We're gonna try it out, see how it goes.
Right.
But the one thing that's easy to see that they don't have enough of is all-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, 7, 8-seaters. And having winter tires in the winter is a big plus because
Mhm.
not all those rental companies promise you that. You're gonna get some maybe mediocre all-terrains, which
Maybe.
depending on where you're going to drive in the winter might just not cut it. And so that's how you can set yourself apart from those rental agencies and
Right.
make Turo look like the better option. And I think that segues well into talking about pricing
Sure.
and how we attempt to do some market research and decide what price point to put our vehicles at. This is something that we constantly feel like we could do a better job at. I think we've probably missed out on bookings a month or two because we weren't as rigorous about doing this. It's a learning process, and unfortunately, there's not
Right.
really a good automated system to do this. Turo has a repricer, but it has a lot of pitfalls.
Or even a better example to like even if you wanted to do it manually, there were places like we had looked into Airbnb for a while and how they price and whatnot. And then also, well, your current business, Amazon, like all these other third party places that offer like, hey, like they're just hosting the website kind of basically and then taking a fee. They offer really good analytics to figure out like what's a good price point, what has been the prices for something like yours, like your, well, I would say vehicle right now, but like your Airbnb or like your product you're trying to sell on Amazon or something. And Turo and CarSync, I think might add something like that. I would say, okay, Turo has an automatic pricing tool. It is not good, especially for Anchorage. I'm not going to talk for the lower 48 because we don't have cars in the lower 48. So it might actually be okay in the lower 48. What it does up here is it price points for like around the country, and it puts it at like, I don't know, a car at like 30 something dollars a day, which none of the national brands have ever had their cars that low, even in the winter. So that's like red flag number one to us, is like when you try to book it, like, or when you try to like set it up, the automation on Turo just isn't there for this area. I don't know why it doesn't go off your specific area instead of, maybe, I guess, I don't know what their numbers are going off of.
Yeah, they don't do a good job of calculating that in a regional aspect. And the biggest
Right.
reason it should be is you look at the cost for us to host a vehicle on Turo. The purchase cost is going to be thousands more than something in the
Right.
lower 48. And Hawaii has the same problem as us. It's harder to get vehicles to that location because you got to ship them. Hawaii by boat, I presume, until they build the bridge. And to Anchorage area, either it's barged or driven through Canada. And so that increases the price quite a bit, the purchase price for vehicles. And all the other associated expenses are even higher. We do winter tires for many of our vehicles in the winter, so we have to have two sets of tires for our cars. If you're in a sunny place,
Florida.
like Florida, you probably just need some bald summer tires.
Okay, well, maybe not that far, but
Yeah. So anyway, one last thing on CarSync that is interesting is you can see kind of the 50th percentile of what people are asking price wise, and then the 50th percentile of what's actually booked. And that's really, really useful to see. So
if
you
you
can
have
see.
no idea what 50th percentile means, that's just a reference to a bell curve. So it literally looks like the shape of a bell if you know statistics, or you can literally Google that, like, what is a bell curve? And it'll show you 50th percentile is just like the average. It's just like right there in the middle. That's all that means.
Yeah, sorry, we're a bit of a math peoples, especially Kelly.
Yeah.
But looking at today specifically, May 5th, the asking 50th percentile is at $120, but the booked percentile is at 80. So
the booked average is a lot lower than the asking average. So you have to take that into consideration when you're going to list your prices. Most likely you're going to just have to lower them.
yeah, that tells you that there's probably a lot of people asking pretty high, and those people aren't getting booked.
Right.
And so that's the tricky part, is you can see that there's maybe someone who's got a Toyota Corolla listed for $300 a day.
Right.
Anyone can do that. You can ask $300 a day.
I could ask $1,000 a day.
But in doing your research and trying to see what your competition is listing at, you gotta kind of weed those outliers out. I know it's not gonna get booked at 300, and so we shouldn't consider that as something to price against. So Kelly, I'll switch back to just the video.
Yeah, so
just our faces.
That's a really good example and point. Like, if you're gonna use like multiple, this is what we currently do. We use multiple points of information and gather as much as we can, like logistically and time-wise as possible. So we use CarSync, get that rough like 50th percent, what just the average listing price right now or what it was or whatnot. And then how far back does it go again? Or maybe not forward, but how far back? Like if I wanted to start pricing for October, like I'm not going to, but if I wanted to, is it just like a month or so? I can't tell.
There might be a way to look farther back, but right here on this screen, it's showing the past 3 months and then the future 3 months. So you see a 6-month spread on this page, and there I'd imagine there's probably a way somewhere in here to
see like a full
look
year
deeper.
or
There's a ton of information in CarSync.
Okay.
And we've only explored a few of the tabs.
Right. So we try to gather as much information as possible from multiple sources, not just Turo. So there for a while, that's been our problem. we were only looking on Turo, and I tend to do most of the changing in prices and whatnot. Did you get me?
I gotcha.
Okay. He was taking a photo of us videoing for those on the podcast. So there for a while, I was just looking at Turo for price points, which can be good and bad. One, I think recently I realized in April so last month we had like, what did we end up getting? Like one booking. Part of the problem was, and we haven't done a full year of this. We started back last August with the Highlander. And so we haven't seen an March, April, May timeframe before. So we were like, I don't know, we're just guessing, right? Now that we can go back on CarSync and look at the pack history, we can see now why. The prices started to skyrocket, started to go up by a lot. And so I was like, okay, well, to be fair, like I'm going to start marketing with those. And so I started upping our prices, still like one of the lower ones, but still pretty high. And they weren't getting booked. And I was like, And then we were like on our trip and we were doing different things. So some of it like was also just I dropped the ball on price pointing, but most of it was because the amount of people listing their cars skyrocketed, and then they were only pricing for what they actually wanted, price-wise in end of May, June, July, maybe August. So they were going with the like, what did you say earlier? Like a $300 price point instead of what the average would have been in actually April to get booked, which might have been like under 100.
Yeah, and
vehicle.
I'll interrupt and say this. I don't think most car rental markets are like this, but here's an idea of how much the variance is between summer and winter for us. Our Toyota Sequoia 8-seater SUV, leather seats, all the fanciness. The winter going rate that we were able to get the past few months was probably on average $90-something a day. Is that accurate?
I think, or maybe just over 100.
Like yeah, $90 to $100 a day. We were getting a decent number of bookings at that. Now, for June and July, we've already gotten quite a few bookings for that vehicle at $350 a day, $350 a day. So that's some math wizard help me out here, but that's like a 325% increase in price, right?
Right.
Am I
I think
on
that's
par
accurate.
There? Maybe a little lower,
Something
maybe
like
300 something percent. And that's crazy. That's crazy. That's probably not normal in most car markets. And that's due to the seasonality of the travel industry here in Alaska.
So even though, like what I was saying before, even though winter prices can be higher, they like, okay, with the automatic pricing tool that Turo offers, and we were saying it's not good, it's because even in the winter, the prices can be higher up here. And that's just the average daily rate. But then in the summer, it's extremely high to get a rental car. But that's not just on Turo. That's, mind you, they're booking, excuse me. I'm sure the people we've gotten, I think a lot of the people we've had guests with, they've been new to Turo. So most likely they've been looking at national brands and gone, well, they're booked out, or our Turo prices have been better than the national brand for that time period. And so they're like, I'm going to book this. And it gives me maybe more seats or gives me more luggage space or whatever. Depending, because again, like especially for our Sequoia that has 8 seats, like that is way bigger than probably what they can find at a national brand. So you have to like compare. So we do like we basically do three, how do you say that? 3
market analyses.
Okay, we do like 3 market analyses.
Analyzations.
We look at CarSync because that can give us back data and forward data. We look at Turo for obvious reasons because we're on Turo, and we look at current pricing for what other people are booking for because that's still comparable. But we also look at the national brands in our area. Specifically, we look at the airport because that's where our cars are located. But they're about the same as like any place in town. Anchorage isn't too big, like distance wise. So we look at CarSync for like data price points for what's actually getting booked. Like we look at what's being listed, how much is it actually going for, and then we can look like 6 months, like 3 months ahead, 3 months behind. And then we look at Turo for like what's going on right now. Like if I want it price pointed, like we have our Highlander sitting right now and I want it booked this week, like tomorrow, I'm going to look on Turo directly and just start undercutting everything. Well, maybe not everything, but undercutting the things that would make sense. And then for the like national brands, when we reference that one, that's mostly for future dates. Like we try to reference that one for like we were starting to use that for June, July, August price points. And we'll probably go back to that again when we start price pointing for September, October, November. So I think that's a basic rundown of how we come up with our numbers. If we out of nowhere, we don't just go with, I would not recommend if you're tour hosting in Anchorage or Alaska at all to not use the Turo automatic pricing point. Like it's not good.
I think I've heard in general, that's not just an Alaskan analysis. I think it's not got great reviews nationwide. Something else to consider when you're pricing and figuring out your price point is figure out what your minimum that you're willing to rent the vehicle out for. And in doing that, you got to do some math. Think about what all your expenses are. Mm-hmm. So the way we do it, every time we have a rental, there's a parking fee that's associated at the beginning of the trip and the end of the trip. So consider that price. Then you have some maintenance considerations. Kind of think about how much future maintenance and how much depreciation the vehicle gets per mile that it's driven. We have our rentals at 200 miles allotted per day. So if someone does a 5-day rental, they are allowed to put 1,000 miles on the vehicle. If they go over, they get charged additional. A 10-day rental, they do 2,000 miles. And you'll see, depending on your location, there are some people that use a lot of those miles, especially in the summer here. A lot of people fly into Anchorage and then drive all over the Southwest Peninsula up to Denali, sometimes all the way to Fairbanks. Right. We're talking about the distance of driving the majority of the East Coast. That's how many miles they're putting in. And so if they're coming for a 10-day trip, they're allowed to use 2,000 miles?
For a 10-day, yes.
Yeah. And so consider what that depreciation is doing to the value of your vehicle, and also consider what maintenance costs might be associated with 2,000 miles being put on your vehicle. How often are you going to do an oil change? How much is that oil change going to cost you? So factor that into your minimum cost. And then the last thing that I think a lot of people don't consider is, what do you value your time at? What do you value your time at? Yes, we could absolutely rent our Mazda out and make $5 profit a day. We could, if we dropped the price to that right now, I bet we'd have a booking for next week. But my time is worth a lot more than $5. Because you got to consider, unless you have employees doing this work for you, and then in that case, what is their time worth? Because you're paying them. And then how much profit do you want to make from that? You're not running a charity where you're just
giving out a free car,
good-natured and trying to help some employees have a job. That's not what you're doing. You're trying to make a profit here. So what is your time worth? Do you value your time at $30 an hour, $40, 20, 15, whatever it might be? And then consider how much time do you invest in each rental? And we're working on getting someone to clean the vehicles for us. And we're working on a solution so that we don't have to shuttle them back and forth across town. But right now, if we clean the vehicle and we have to shuttle it, each rental is how many hours of our time?
Oh, to at least get it there and clean it?
Yeah,
Probably about, well, just the getting it there back and forth and then cleaning it, probably about 4 hours.
Yeah, probably about 4 hours. And if we're gonna shuttle ourselves over there, then that's 4 hours for one of us and probably an hour to 2 hours for the other person who's got to
Right.
help assist in the shuttling of the vehicle. Or we could, and we have done a few times, an Uber, so that only one person has to spend that time. Then you got to consider that Uber cost. For
Right.
us, it's
Right.
about around $25 to get from our house via Uber ride to the location we store the cars at. So those are all things you got to consider there. And when thinking about the minimum price, because you can always drop it lower and
Right.
you could probably get your booking utilization up into the 90%, even in the winter, if you slash prices to something quite low. But I don't think that's the best thing to do.
Right. And what he's referencing in regards to like 200 miles a day, that's like the minimum you can put it at. You can actually allot it up to, well, unlimited. They can just drive it unlimited amount of miles, or up to $500, 500 miles a day. The reason why we put it so low is because if they're going to drive it far, we'd rather have them book for longer time periods. Right now, we currently have our vehicle set to, I think it was 5 days, if not 3 days, something like that.
Yeah, our
So,
SUVs, that's another thing to consider when thinking about your minimum price. And we just listed the sedan that we got, but because the price right now, at least for May, is so low, um, rather than keeping the price high and not getting any bookings, I decided to increase the minimum trip duration so that in order for that car to be booked,
right.
someone has to book it for 5 days. And that increases how much minimum revenue we'll get. And so that then matches a little bit closer up to what we value our time with at. Because the SUVs go for a higher price, right now we have them at a 3-day minimum booking. But that's something we're kind of currently analyzing and deciding what's best. I
Right.
know some people I've talked to only do 5-day minimum bookings, and I see a lot of advantages to that. And they've said they haven't seen a decrease in bookings. So it's like if
Right.
you're in the Airbnb industry, would you rather have 1 month-long guest or 31-day guests? And the answer is obviously the one guest, because there's going to
Right.
be
Right.
less turnover work for you in cleaning and communicating and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something to consider too. Even if you did like a 5-day minimum, or I think that's the max you can do is like 5-day minimum. Uh, you end up having maybe bigger gaps in between, or you could like where it ends up being like, well, there's a 4-day gap in between like this booking and the next one, which like that needs to just be part of your analysis for how you price point, how you want to run your own business. Some people do offer like 1-day like bookings. We currently do not. We probably never will. But you just have to analyze those things in regards to how much you're going to charge like per day. Um, and consider that, especially with your calendar, because if you're going to allow one day bookings and they book in the middle of the month, or they book already and you're like, well, now I can't get another booking, you need to make sure your prices are high enough to cover that turnaround and for them to be able to kind of like block your schedule from another booking being made, maybe during that week-long period or whatnot. Let's see. Did I miss anything else about pricing?
Yeah, I think another thing to consider with pricing is who your target customer is.
Right.
If you
Yes.
price super low,
Who are
you
you gonna get?
will be more likely to maybe get the budget kind of renter
Right.
that statistically won't take care of it as well.
Right.
If you keep your prices a little higher, you might avoid some of those potential problems with vehicle damage and cleanliness. And
Right.
and in considering that, I think the biggest factor isn't just how you price, but what types of vehicles you choose for your fleet. That's one reason we started with SUVs, because you're going to get on average in general a higher class of renter because it's a little more expensive to get that vehicle. And so they're going to take a little better care of it than someone who might be renting the budget economy sedan.
Right.
So I'm interested to see what comes of this sedan that we just picked up. I know full well that it might get destroyed and throttled.
That's fair.
But we have insurance if someone totals it.
And
we
it's not
have
the worst. It's not the worst sedan on the market, too, to be fair. Like,
yes.
You have to consider, like, if you're trying to maybe like do it like us and you pay for your cars with cash and you're like, well, I only have $2,000, and it might get, well, I'm not sure, but depending on your market, it might get you a car within the year range, because you have to have a car 12 years or newer on the year you're listing it. Anyways, and you list something that's like a $2,000 car and it doesn't look great, but it runs, it like meets all the criteria for Turo, it just doesn't look great. We've actually rented a car that was not a pretty car, I'll say that. And it was very dirty, definitely needed multiple shampooings done. But because of that, like what kind of customer, like Josiah was just saying, are you going to get? Like if you have like bad photos, if you don't take care of the car, like for us, like when we got the car, it was in good condition. It needed a good shampoo. Like the seats needed a good shampoo. So we paid for that. Like we wanted it to look nice, not be dirty. Could we have just avoided it and just been like, well, somebody who wants to rent it with a dirty, muddy dog paw print on the center of one of the seats, like they'll just deal with it. And it's like, well, sure, but then you're gonna get customers that don't want to deal with that, and those are the customers we want. Somebody who doesn't want to deal with, this is actually a dirty car. Like I wanted a clean car.
Yeah, and if through the course of owning that vehicle, you're able to maintain it and keep it in decent shape, that will help retain its value when it's someday time to exit, to sell that vehicle and get out of the business, or to sell it in order to upgrade. But if you haven't been able to keep it clean because of your cleaning practices or the average renter you get, then it might not be as easy to sell at the end of the day. I think in looking at the different classes of vehicles, the easiest way to do that is go to one of the national brands, Hertz, and see what classes of vehicles Hertz offers. There's the economy sedan, which is I think probably something like a Yaris, a Toyota Yaris. Like you can fit 5 people in there, I think.
maybe 4.
But it's going to be tight, and you can maybe fit 2 suitcases if they're small carry-ons.
Right.
And then the next class is more like a mid-size or standard sedan, and I think our Mazda 3 is somewhere in there. That's where you've got the Toyota Corollas, the Nissan Versas, Camrys. Those are probably the most common ones you see at the national brands. And then
those matter with regards to not only like class, like maybe leather seats and whatnot, it's mostly the size. Like how big are the seats? How big is the trunk space? What are these extra features that are on it? Whatnot.
Exactly. And then you get into the kind of higher end, less economy stuff. You're talking about SUVs and minivans and mid-size SUVs. And in my opinion, the type of person who's going to rent a SUV or a minivan versus a sedan is either the type of person that has money and wants to be comfortable on their trip, or the type of person that has a lot of bodies and needs a lot of seats. And in general,
has a lot of money to book for that.
Yeah, they're going to need the money too. In general, those two types of people, I think, are going to take better care of it. Although last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about how kids can be a little messy in the cars.
Though we do want, like, that's our client base. We would like to book families. We enjoy that. We don't like, that was our That's our goal. Especially with an SUV, we prefer to book families. We don't mind that. But yeah, we've found some interesting things in the car, like, a piece of pizza, a whole piece of pizza just in between the seat. You're like, awesome. Which is funny. I mean, it was cleanable and it was
Yeah,
fine.
and
But
I guess when it comes down to it, there's not really a difference. But in my mind, there's a difference in that I'm assuming the parents of the child that put that pizza between the seats, the parents didn't know. And if they had known, they probably would have done something about it. Things can be crazy when you've got, I think they had probably 3 or 4 kids in the vehicle
right,
by
because
how
they were
much food
using,
was left.
yes.
In my mind, there's a difference between that and versus say an adult that's renting a sedan and leaving pizza boxes in the back.
And like trashing it and like putting dirt everywhere,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
really just not, or smoking in the vehicle, or like when you clearly told them
Yes.
they can't smoke in the vehicle and they choose to still do so.
Yes. Fortunately,
I don't want that.
we haven't had smoking yet, but I'm sure that'll come at some point, and we'll have to get an ozone machine or something like that. Maybe we should go ahead and buy one preemptively now.
No,
If we buy one right now, they'll never be smoked in.
that's fair.
Is it
That is fair.
Murphy's Law, I think? Or yeah. Anyway, any last thoughts about Turo market analysis and pricing strategy?
Oh, I know that on Turo you can actually decide whether you want to give people price discounts. So under, like, if you were to list a car and then you go under like edit listing, it's called pricing and discounts. If you're there, you can change like the daily price. That's just like the automatic what it'll just set it to. Cause I think, how far in advance will it show a calendar? A year?
Yeah, about a year. If
A
someone
year?
wanted to, I think they could book for May 4th, 2023.
Awesome. Please don't.
It's kind of scary, yeah.
But our daily price, we purposely set it high, and so we can manually go back in and change the rates, because summer can be so crazy. That's why we put it so high originally. That way we can like lower it when necessary. But you can do custom pricing, like based off the calendar, which you can just go straight to the calendar and do. But under the pricing and discounts, you can go down to discounts, and they have like you can put a percentage that you can mark down the cost for a 3-day plus booking, 7-day plus booking, or 30-day plus booking. And we have done all of them. We've done different discounts. We've done a couple different rates for that. We currently are not offering anything. And here is why. We started having problems managing like how much we were manually booking the car for and then what was actually getting booked for. When you're manually going in and fixing the calendar, I mean, it'll calculate it and do it itself. That's not the problem. The problem was just like for us trying to manage internally, like what did it just book for? Like, oh, it was that little, or oh wow, I wanted it higher, or whatnot. It just like changes the price so easily and you just don't think about it. And so we just are like, nope, we'll just set the price and this is the lowest it'll be or highest it'll be, that sort of thing, manually ourselves. So you can take that into consideration. And if this is a great way to encourage people, if you want a longer than 3-day booking and you offer 1 to 2-day bookings, this is a great way to do that. You can set it to mark it down 10%, 5%, 15%, or whatever percentage you want. If they book for 3 days or longer when you're offering a lower day quantity. 7-day plus discount naturally, because if you're making the minimum 5 days, but you really want to encourage the 7+ days, you can actually encourage that by making a discount per day or for the trip.
Yeah, that was our strategy starting out. Now that we've turned off the duration discounts, I don't know that we've really seen a difference.
No.
So I don't think that the duration discounts played out in our experience the way we thought they would.
Right.
But it's definitely something worth exploring and looking into.
And maybe it helps with you in your area. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of anything else. Oh, pricing. There are extras that you can price for that I would encourage you to do if you have the capacity to do so. But at the very least, what's it called? You can book an extra for a gas, like a full tank of gas.
Prepaid fuel.
That's
if
right.
you rent a car from any of the national brands, they're going to try to upsell you the prepaid fuel, in that you don't need to worry about dropping the vehicle off with a full tank of gas. You pay whatever fee up front and they'll take care of it. And we've had a few people take advantage of that for some of these summer bookings. They've paid for it. And perhaps that was wishful calculations on their part, thinking if gas goes up to another $1, they might actually get a deal. If they return the vehicle empty and gas continues to go up by July,
we're gonna have to out of pocket.
They might make off in that case.
But this is when you do that, when you do prepaid refuel, you're calculating the cost of filling it up the entire way, and then I think it also offers like a $10 like surcharge. So for the convenience of doing so naturally. If you didn't know, most people can return the vehicle without like a full tank of gas. They just have to pay the difference, and there's a surcharge on top for the convenience fee of us filling it up.
Yeah.
So in case somebody didn't prepay and didn't do prepaid refuel, and they still could drop it off without a full tank of gas. And that happens. That's happened to us.
Yeah, honestly.
A lot of the times unintentionally. They're like, hey, we ran out of time. We had to make it to the airport. And like, that's fine. I mean, we just let them know. Like, they just let us know, hey, like, just tell us the fee. We go through Turo, take care of it. It's no big deal.
Yeah, $10 convenience charge for not having to return with a full tank of gas is actually pretty fair.
Yeah,
on
maybe
the
we should
rental
say that because more
person's
people will do.
part. Yeah, I think in the future when we rent Turo vehicles, I might just return them at whatever level.
Right, and just pay the difference.
Knowing I'm just going to pay $10. Because often when you're ending your trip, it's a pain to find a gas station. You're crunched for time trying to get to an airport or something like that. So $10 is probably worth removing that extra step or stress.
I'm sure it's even nice, even through the national brands. I don't even know what they charge, but we've done that we've booked through a national brand because we do a lot of, when we booked rental cars, we've done a lot of one-way bookings, and that doesn't really happen on Turo. And when we've gone through a national brand, we've been like rushing around. Do you remember that one time we ended up at like, we thought it was a gas station because it said it on Google Maps. So we showed up, we're like, this isn't a gas station. It was like a refueling station for like big trucks or something, like a special type of truck that like you just can't use.
Diesel
something, some sort of
station or something.
Right. And we were
like,
we were like,
traditional gas
it
station.
was just so much more stressful because then we had to backtrack and go find, it was just that.
Anyway, I think that probably wraps up what we were going to talk about today with Turo management, pricing, metrics, things like that. If there's anything we missed that you want us to touch on in the future, feel free to shoot us a message or put a comment, or send us a carrier pigeon.
A carrier pigeon, a smoke signal.
You can find us on Instagram. I'm at baconbagel_AK and
at jellybagel_AK. Also, you're seeing us on Instagram right now. Hi guys. What's up?
I think it's our first time doing the Instagram live. Yeah. So we'll see later how the video and audio went.
Yeah, so apologize if you can't really hear us.
I can see it's definitely like crooked and you're mostly seeing our ceiling.
Our ceiling. But you can message us on there if you're listening to the podcast. You can check us out on Instagram there, message us your questions, or find our most recent post and, message us there or something. But if you're on YouTube, you can comment down below any of your questions, or find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube, Nagel, and then wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us there. We broadcast everywhere. So
yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.